The morning sun painted the ruined city in shades of orange and red. Tae-ho pulled his mask tighter over his face as he walked through what used to be Busan's busy streets. Now only broken concrete and twisted metal remained. The Great Collapse had turned the world into a graveyard 50 years ago, but people like him still searched through the bones of the old world. His boots crunched on glass as he stepped over a fallen street sign. The radiation counter on his belt clicked steadily. Not too bad today. He had maybe 6 hours before he needed to head back to his shelter. 6 hours to find something valuable enough to trade for food and clean water. Tae-ho stopped at what used to be an electronics store. The roof had caved in long ago, but sometimes useful things survived in the basement levels. He pulled out his scanner and swept it across the rubble. The device beeped softly, showing traces of rare metals somewhere below. He spent an hour digging through debris with his reinforced gloves. The work was hard, but his military training had taught him to be patient. Every piece of salvageable technology meant another day of survival. The scanner led him deeper into the ruins, past melted cars and collapsed buildings. Then something strange caught his eye. The ground ahead shimmered with an odd, silvery light. As he got closer, Tae-ho realized he was looking at sand. But this wasn't ordinary sand. The grains looked like tiny crystals, each one catching and reflecting light in impossible ways. This type of sand didn't exist anywhere on Earth that he knew of. His scanner went crazy as he approached. The readings jumped between different energy signatures, none of them matching anything in his database. Tae-ho knelt down and carefully scooped up a handful of the crystal sand. It felt warm against his gloves and seemed to pulse with its own inner light. That's when he saw her. At first, he thought it was just another piece of debris, but as his eyes adjusted, he realized he was looking at a person, a woman, half buried in the strange sand lying perfectly still. Her skin had a pale blue tint that definitely wasn't normal for any human he'd ever seen. Long silver hair spread around her head like spilled water. Tae-ho's hand moved instinctively to the weapon at his side. In the wasteland, you couldn't trust anything that looked out of place. Too many scavengers had died because they let their guard down around something unusual. But as he watched, he could see the slight rise and fall of her chest. She was breathing. He activated his scanner and pointed it at her. The device nearly overloaded from whatever energy it was detecting. The readings showed a heartbeat, but it was slower than human normal. Her body temperature was lower, too. Most strange of all, the scanner detected bone density and muscle mass that was definitely not human. Tae-ho circled around her carefully, keeping his distance. She looked young, maybe in her 20s, but there was something timeless about her features. Her face was more angular than human faces usually were, with high cheekbones and a slightly pointed chin. Her fingers, he noticed, were longer than they should be, and her ears came to subtle points at the tips. Not human. Definitely not human. But she was hurt. Even from a distance, he could see dark stains on her clothes that looked like blood. Her left arm was bent at an odd angle, probably broken. Whatever she was, wherever she came from, she was dying. Tae-ho faced a choice that could change everything. The smart thing would be to walk away. Unknown aliens could carry diseases that would kill him. They could be dangerous in ways he couldn't imagine. His military training screamed at him to retreat and report this to someone with more authority. But 50 years of wasteland living had taught him something else. In this broken world, sometimes helping someone was the only thing that made you still human. He approached slowly, ready to jump back if she moved suddenly. Up close, he could see that her clothes were made from some kind of material he didn't recognize. It looked like fabric, but it seemed to shift color slightly as he watched. Her breathing was getting weaker. Tae-ho made his decision. He carefully lifted her from the crystal sand. She was lighter than he expected, as if her bones were hollow like a bird's. The moment he touched her, his scanner exploded with new readings. Energy flowed between them for just a second, and he felt a strange tingling in his hands. The woman's eyes fluttered open. They were the color of deep ocean water, blue-green and full of intelligence. For a moment they stared at each other in complete silence. Then she said something in a language he had never heard before. The words were musical, almost like singing, but there was urgency in her voice. "I don't understand," Teho said softly. "But you're hurt. I'm going to help you." She seemed to understand his tone, if not his words. Her strange eyes studied his face, and he had the feeling she was trying to decide if she could trust him. Finally, she nodded slightly. Teho picked her up carefully, trying not to hurt her broken arm. She weighed almost nothing. As he carried her away from the crystal sand, he noticed that the strange material was already beginning to fade. Within minutes, it looked like ordinary dirt again. The walk back to his shelter took twice as long as usual. He had to stop frequently to rest and to check that no one was following them. The wasteland had taught him to be paranoid. People would kill for far less than an alien visitor, especially if they thought she might have valuable technology. His shelter was hidden in the basement of an old apartment building. He had reinforced the walls and installed several security systems over the years. It wasn't much, but it was safe and clean. He laid her down on his cot and activated the medical scanner he'd salvaged from a hospital years ago. The readings were unlike anything he'd ever seen. Her blood chemistry was completely different from human blood. Her heart had 4 chambers instead of the normal 4, and it beat in a complex rhythm that the scanner couldn't properly analyze. Most importantly, she was dying. Whatever was in Earth's atmosphere, her body couldn't process it properly. Teho sat back in his chair and looked at her sleeping form. He had just made the most important decision of his life, and he had no idea what would happen next. All he knew was that she was alone, hurt, and far from home, just like everyone else who had survived the Great Collapse. Outside his shelter, the wind howled through the empty streets. But for the first time in years, Teho didn't feel alone. He had found something in the wasteland that was more valuable than any piece of salvaged technology. He had found hope. 3 days passed before she woke up properly. Teho spent most of that time watching over her, checking her vital signs and trying to figure out how to help her breathe better. He had rigged up an air filtration system using parts from old medical equipment, but he wasn't sure if it was working. On the 3rd morning, her ocean blue eyes opened and stayed open. She looked around his small shelter with curiosity instead of fear. When she saw him sitting nearby, she tried to sit up. "Easy," Teho said, reaching out to steady her. "You were hurt pretty badly." She spoke again in that musical language, longer sentences this time. Her voice was clearer now, stronger. Teho shook his head to show he didn't understand, but she kept talking. Then something amazing happened. As she continued speaking, her words began to change. The musical sounds slowly shifted into something that sounded more like Korean. Not perfect Korean, but close enough that he could understand parts of what she was saying. "Where am I?" she asked, the words slightly off but understandable. Teho stared at her in shock. "How did you just do that? Learn my language?" She touched her throat gently. "My people, we learn sounds quickly. Your language has patterns. I listen. I understand." She paused, thinking. "What is this place?" "This is Earth," Teho said slowly. "The planet Earth. This used to be a city called Busan, in a country called Korea." "Earth," she repeated, and her face showed sadness. "I remember now. My ship? It fell from the sky, during the burning time." "The burning time?" Teho leaned forward. "When was that?" "When the lights in the sky went out, when the screaming stopped." She looked at him with those deep eyes. "Your people call it something else, yes?" A chill ran down Teho's spine. "The Great Collapse. You're talking about the Great Collapse. That was 50 years ago. She nodded slowly. I have been sleeping in the sand for 50 of your years. She tried to stand up, but her legs were too weak. My name is difficult for your mouth to say. You may call me Nari. I'm Teho, he said. Nari, what are you? Where do you come from? I am Vellani, she said, pronouncing the word carefully so he could understand. My people come from a star very far from here. We were running when my ship crashed. Running from what? Fear flickered across her face. From the ones who eat worlds, the devourers. Teho didn't know what to say to that. He handed her a bottle of clean water, and she drank it gratefully. As she drank, he noticed that her broken arm seemed to be healing much faster than it should. The swelling was already going down. You heal quickly, he said. Vellani bodies fix themselves, Nari explained. But this world, your air, your radiation, it makes me sick. I am dying slowly. The sadness in her voice made Teho's chest tight. Is there anything I can do to help? Nari looked around his shelter, taking in all the salvaged equipment and jury-rigged systems. You are an engineer. You understand how things work. I used to be a military engineer. Now I'm just a scavenger. Show me your machines, she said. Teho helped her stand and walk around the shelter. She examined everything with intense curiosity. When she saw his broken radio equipment, she asked if she could touch it. The moment her fingers made contact with the circuits, the radio crackled to life. How did you do that? Teho asked. Vellani can speak to machines, Nari said simply. We join our minds with them for a short time. She moved to his water purification system, which had been working poorly for weeks. Again, she touched it with her long fingers, and suddenly, it was running, better than it had in years. Next, she fixed his scanner, his medical equipment, and even his broken flashlights. This is impossible, Teho said, watching her work. You're making them better than they were when they were new. Your people build good machines, Nari said, but you do not know how to make them talk to each other properly. Everything wants to work together, but you keep them apart. As the day went on, Nari grew stronger. She was a fast learner in more ways than just language. She studied everything Teho showed her about human technology and survival in the wasteland. In return, she shared stories about her people and their journey through space. The Vellani were peaceful, she explained as they shared a meal of canned food. We studied stars and grew beautiful plants and made music that could heal broken hearts. But then the devourers came to our part of the galaxy. What are the devourers? Teho asked. They are hunger that walks like people, Nari said, her voice growing quiet. They consume everything, not just food or resources, but life itself. They eat the essence of entire worlds, leaving nothing behind but empty rock. And they came to Earth? During your burning time, yes, but something strange happened here. On other worlds, the devourers consumed everything in days. Here, they only took some things and then left. I do not understand why. Teho thought about this. The Great Collapse had been terrible, but humanity had survived. Broken and scattered, but alive. Maybe there was a reason for that. That evening, as Nari rested, Teho noticed something strange. His own equipment was working better than usual. The air felt cleaner in his shelter. Even his chronic cough from years of breathing, polluted air was getting better. Nari, he said, being around you is changing things, making them better. She looked at him seriously. Vellani life energy is strong. It spreads to things around us. But Teho? She paused. You are changing too. I can feel it. What do you mean? Your mind is becoming more like mine. You will be able to understand machines better soon. Feel their patterns. She smiled, and it was the first time he had seen her really smile. You saved my life. Now we are connected. That night, Taeho lay awake thinking about everything that had happened. 3 days ago, he had been just another scavenger, trying to survive in a broken world. Now he had an alien friend who could fix anything she touched, and apparently she was changing him too. Outside, the wind still howled through the empty city. But inside his shelter, surrounded by humming machines that worked better than they ever had before, Taeho felt something he hadn't felt in decades. He felt like the future might be worth living to see. The alarm woke Taeho from a deep sleep. Red lights flashed on his security panel, and the motion sensors were going crazy. Someone was coming, and there were a lot of them. "Nari, wake up," he whispered urgently, shaking her shoulder. "We have company." She was alert instantly, those blue-green eyes sharp and focused. "How many?" Taeho checked his monitors. "At least 6 people. Military formation. They're surrounding the building." He grabbed his emergency pack and handed Nari a spare jacket. "We need to leave. Now." Through his security cameras, he could see soldiers in the gray uniforms of the Korean Restoration Authority. The KRA was one of the larger survivor factions, and they didn't play nice with independent scavengers. They believed in rebuilding civilization through force and control. "There," Nari pointed at one of the screens. "That woman in the white coat. She carries different tools than the others." Taeho looked closer. Among the soldiers was a middle-aged woman with short black hair and intense eyes. She held some kind of scanning device that was beeping rapidly as she pointed it toward his building. "Scientist," he muttered. "They're tracking something. Probably the energy signatures from when you fixed my equipment." "I am sorry," Nari said. "I brought danger to you." "Don't be sorry. Just help me get us out of here." Taeho led her to a hidden panel in the floor. Underneath was a maintenance tunnel that connected to the old subway system. He had discovered it years ago and kept it as an emergency escape route. They dropped down into the darkness just as the soldiers broke down his front door. The tunnel was narrow and filled with pipes, but it was their only option. They crawled through the cramped space, following the path Taeho had memorized. Behind them, they could hear shouting and the sound of his shelter being torn apart. "This way," Taeho whispered, leading Nari into a wider section of the tunnel. System. Here they could stand and move faster, but the footsteps echoing behind them meant their escape had been discovered. "They follow us," Nari said, listening to the sounds of pursuit. "Yeah, but I know these tunnels better than they do." Taeho pulled out a small device and pressed a button. Somewhere behind them, a section of tunnel collapsed, filling the air with dust and noise. That should slow them down. They reached an old subway platform that had been abandoned since before the Great Collapse. Rusty train cars sat on broken tracks, covered in 50 years of dust and decay. Taeho led Nari between the cars, moving toward another exit. "Stop right there!" a voice called out. Bright lights suddenly illuminated the platform. Commander Woo Jin, Park, stepped out from behind one of the train cars, pointing a rifle at them. He was a tall man with graying hair and cold eyes. 3 soldiers flanked him. "Well, well," Commander Park said. "The famous ghost of Busan. We've been trying to find your hideout for months, Taeho." "What do you want, Park?" Taeho kept himself between the commander and Nari. "We want her," Park said, nodding toward Nari. "Dr. Lee's instruments detected massive energy readings from your location. Readings that don't match any known human technology." The woman in the white coat stepped into view. Dr. So-Young Lee looked at Nari like she was studying a fascinating insect. "Incredible," she murmured. "The bone structure, the skin pigmentation. You're not human, are you?" Nari said nothing, but Taeho could feel tension radiating from her. "The KRA has a duty to investigate all potential threats to human survival," Commander Park continued. "This alien will come with us for questioning." "She's not a threat," Taeho said. "She's a refugee. Her people were attacked, just like us." "That's for us to determine," Dr. Lee said, stepping closer with her scanner. The knowledge we could gain from studying her biology, her technology, it could help rebuild our civilization. You mean it could help you control what's left of it? Tae-ho shot back. Commander Park's expression darkened. Careful, scavenger. You're already in trouble for harboring an unknown alien without reporting it to proper authorities. That's when Nari moved. She was faster than any human could be. One moment she was standing beside Tae-ho, the next she was behind one of the soldiers, her hand on his weapon. The rifle simply stopped working, as if all its internal components had suddenly forgotten how to function. Your machines do not like violence, she said calmly, backing toward Tae-ho. I asked them to sleep. All around the platform, the soldiers, weapons had gone dead. Even Dr. Lee's scanner was dark and silent. Commander Park drew a knife, but Nari touched a nearby electrical panel. Every light on the platform went out, plunging them into complete darkness. This way, Nari whispered, taking Tae-ho's hand. Somehow, she could see perfectly in the dark. They ran through the black tunnel system, Nari leading with inhuman grace. Behind them, angry shouts echoed off the walls. Emergency lights flickered on as the soldiers tried to pursue them, but Nari seemed to know exactly where to go. They emerged from a hidden exit 3 blocks away from Tae-ho's shelter. In the distance, they could see KRA vehicles surrounding his building. Soldiers were carrying out all his equipment and supplies. I am sorry, Nari said again, watching his life's work being stolen. You lost everything because of me. No, Tae-ho said firmly. I lost my stuff, but I gained something more important. He looked at her in the morning light. What you did back there, shutting down their weapons. How? Machines have patterns of energy, Nari explained. I can change those patterns, make them work differently, or not work at all. And you can see in the dark? Vellani eyes are made for starlight. Earth's sun is very bright to us. They found shelter in an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. As they caught their breath, Tae-ho realized their situation was worse than he had thought. The KRA now knew about Nari, and they would never stop hunting her. Dr. Lee had looked at her like she was the key to every scientific question ever asked. They will not give up, Nari said, echoing his thoughts. That scientist woman, she has the hunger for knowledge. She will tear me apart to learn my secrets. Then we need to find somewhere they can't reach us, Tae-ho said. I know some people. Who might help? You would risk more friends for me? Tae-ho looked at this strange, beautiful alien who had already changed his life in ways he was just beginning to understand. Nari, you said we're connected now. That means your problems are my problems. She smiled that rare smile again. And your problems are mine. As they prepared to leave the factory, Tae-ho couldn't shake the feeling that Dr. Lee had recognized something about Nari that even he didn't understand yet. The way she had looked at her with that hungry scientific curiosity. Whatever Nari really was, whatever secrets she carried, the KRA wanted them badly enough to hunt them across the wasteland, and that meant their real troubles were just beginning. The resistance base was hidden deep underground, in what used to be a subway maintenance facility. Tae-ho had served with some of these people during the early days after the Great Collapse, when small groups of survivors had banded together to help each other. Jin Soo-han was waiting for them at the entrance, a thin man with quick eyes and steady hands. He had been Tae-ho's communications specialist in the old military unit. Behind him stood Mi-young Choi, their former medic, now the Resistance's unofficial leader. Tae-ho, Mi-young said, embracing him warmly. When we got your message, we couldn't. Believe it, you've been a ghost for 10 years. I had reasons to stay hidden, Tae-ho said. But now those reasons have changed. He gestured to Nari, who was looking around the base with interest. This is Nari. She's not from around here. Jin-soo studied Nari's unusual features and pale blue skin. Alien? Vellani, Nari said simply. I crashed here during what you call the Great Collapse. Mi-young's eyes widened. You've been on Earth for 50 years? sleeping in crystal sand, healing from my injuries, Nari explained. Until Tai-Ho found me. They gathered in the base's main computer room, where banks of salvaged equipment hummed quietly. The Resistance had built an impressive network over the years, connecting survivor communities across what remained of Korea and beyond. The KRA is looking for her, Tai-Ho explained. They want to study her, use her technology for their own purposes. Dr. Lee seemed especially interested, Nari added. She looked at me like I was a puzzle to solve. Mi-young frowned. So Young Lee used to be a good person before the KRA got their claws into her, but now she's obsessed with finding ways to give the KRA technological advantages over other survivor groups. Show them what you can do, Tai-Ho said to Nari. Nari approached the main computer terminal. The moment her fingers touched the keyboard, every screen in the room came alive with data. Information flowed faster than any human could read, but Nari seemed to understand all of it instantly. Your networks reach far, she said, her eyes reflecting the glow of the screens. I can see other bases, other communities. You are more connected than I thought. That's impossible, Jin-Soo said, staring at the displays. Some of those connections are encrypted military channels. It would take weeks to break into them. Encryption is just a pattern, Nari replied. All patterns can be understood if you know how to listen. She continued working with the computer system, and gradually her expression changed. What had started as curiosity became concern, then alarm. This is wrong, she whispered. The data, it shows things that should not be. What things? Mi-young asked. Nari pulled up files from deep within the military databases, information that had been classified since the Great Collapse. Images appeared on the screens, satellite photos from 50 years ago showing strange objects in Earth's sky. Ships, Tai-Ho breathed. Those are ships. Devourer vessels, Nari confirmed, her voice tight with old fear. They came here during the burning time, just as they came to my world and so many others. More files appeared on the screens. Reports of entire cities going silent overnight. Accounts of people simply disappearing, leaving behind only empty clothes and personal belongings. Descriptions of creatures that fed on life itself. But they left, Jin-Soo said, studying the timeline. The attack stopped after about 2 years. Why? Nari was quiet for a long moment, accessing deeper files. When she spoke again, her voice was filled with wonder and confusion. They could not consume you completely, she said. Look at these biological surveys from the attack sites. Human DNA, it resisted their feeding process. They could take some of your life force, but not all of it. What does that mean? Mi-young asked. It means humans are different from every other species the Devourers have encountered, Nari explained. Every other world they attacked was completely drained. No survivors, no life of any kind left behind. But here, millions died, but millions more lived. She pulled up more data, comparing genetic samples from before and after the Great Collapse. Something in human biology makes you resistant to complete consumption. The Devourers realized they could not finish their harvest here, so they moved on to easier targets. Tai-Ho felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying they might come back? I am saying they will come back, Nari said grimly. Devourers always return to unfinished worlds. They leave them alone for decades while they consume other places, but eventually... She pulled up star charts showing movement patterns across the galaxy. They are coming back. Soon. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Then Mi-young stepped forward. How soon? Nari manipulated the computer interface, pulling astronomical data from observatories around the world. What she found made her face go pale. There, she pointed to a section of space beyond Earth's solar system. Energy signatures consistent, With Devourer technology. They are already in your outer system, moving slowly, studying your defenses. What defenses? Jinsu laughed bitterly. Half the world is still trying to rebuild from the last time they were here. That is exactly what they are counting on, Nari said. They expect to find the same broken world they left behind, but... She looked around at the resistance base, at the technology they had built from scraps and determination. You have grown stronger than they know. Not strong enough to fight alien invaders, Mi-young pointed out. Perhaps, Nari said, but I carry information they do not expect you to have. She touched her temple. When my ship crashed, I was carrying intelligence about Devourer weaknesses, battle plans, weapon specifications, everything my people learned in our long war against them. Can you access it? Tae-ho asked. Some of it. The crash damaged my memory cores, scattered the information, but with your computer systems, I might be able to piece it together. She began working again, her consciousness seeming to merge with the machines around her. Data flowed across the screens in patterns too complex for human minds to follow. But gradually, fragments of information began to emerge. Ship schematics, energy weapon designs, most importantly, detailed analysis of Devourer biology and technology. Look at this, Nari said, highlighting a section of the data. Devourer ships use organic technology, living machines that grow and adapt. But they have a weakness. They are vulnerable to certain energy frequencies. Frequencies we can generate? Mi-young asked. With the right modifications to human technology, yes. Nari pulled up more files. But it will require cooperation between your people and mine. Vellani biotechnology combined with human engineering. There's just one problem, Tae-ho said quietly. You're the only Vellani on Earth. Nari looked at him with those deep ocean eyes. Not anymore, she said. Being around you, breathing your air, sharing your life, I am becoming something new. Part Vellani, part human. And you, she reached out and touched his hand. You are changing too. I can feel it. As if to prove her point, Tae-ho found that he could suddenly understand the data flowing across the screens. The patterns made sense to him in a way they never had before. He could see the connections between different systems, feel the pulse of information moving through the networks. This is incredible, he whispered. I can actually understand what you're doing. The joining has begun, Nari said, but we will need more than just the two of us to build weapons capable of fighting the Devourers. Mi-young looked at the resistance fighters gathered around them. Then we'd better start reaching out to other communities. If what you're saying is true, we're going to need everyone working together. Even the KRA? Jinsu asked. Especially the KRA, Nari said. They have resources we need, and when the Devourers return, old grudges will not matter. Only survival will matter. As alarms began sounding throughout the base, signaling that their location had been discovered, Tae-ho realized that their quiet life as refugees was over. The war for Earth was about to begin again. Professor Kyung-min Yoon lived alone in a fortress of books and broken machines. His hideout was buried deep in the mountains, far from any major settlement. Tae-ho had known him before the Great Collapse, when Yoon had been one of Korea's leading experts in theoretical biology. Now he was just another survivor, but one with knowledge that might save the world. Tae-ho, the old professor said, opening his reinforced door. I wondered when you would come to see me. His eyes moved to Nari, taking in her unusual features with scientific curiosity rather than fear. And you brought a friend. Professor, this is Nari. She's... Vellani, Yoon interrupted. I can tell. The bone structure, the skin pigmentation, the way she moves. I've been studying her people for 30 years. Tae-ho and Nari exchanged surprised looks. You know about the Vellani? I know about a lot of things the KRA and other factions prefer to keep secret, Yoon said, leading them into his laboratory. The room was filled with strange artifacts, alien technology mixed with human equipment in ways that shouldn't work, but somehow did. After the Great Collapse, I made it my mission to understand what really happened, Yoon explained. The official story was that human civilization simply broke down from environmental collapse and resource wars, but the evidence never supported that. He showed them tables covered with pieces of metal and crystal that clearly weren't made on Earth. Crash sites all over the world, not just devourer ships, but vessels from dozens of different species. Earth was a battleground, and we were caught in the middle. The Vellani fought the devourers here? Nari asked, studying one of the artifacts. Your people and others, Yoon confirmed. A desperate last stand against the devourers' advance. Most of the fighting happened in space, but some ships crashed on Earth. That's how I learned about your species. He pulled out a thick journal filled with notes and sketches. Vellani biology is fascinating. Your people evolved to interface directly with technology. But more than that, you're genetically compatible with dozens of other species. Compatible how? Tae-ho asked. Your DNA is incredibly adaptable, Yoon explained. Vellani genetic material can bond with other species at a cellular level, creating hybrid organisms that combine the best traits of both parents. Nari was studying the alien artifacts with growing excitement. These are memory cores from Vellani ships, she said, if they are intact. Some are, Yoon said, but I've never been able to access them. The technology is too advanced for human understanding. Nari placed her hands on one of the crystalline devices. Immediately, it began to glow with soft blue light. Information flowed through the crystal matrix, and Nari's eyes reflected the inner light as she absorbed the data. The battle of Earth, she whispered. I can see it all now. My people. We came here because human DNA is unique in the galaxy. Unique how? Tae-ho asked. Every species the devourers had encountered could be completely consumed, Nari explained, still connected to the memory core. But humans, you have genetic sequences that resist total absorption. The devourers could feed on your life force, but they could never drain it completely. Professor Yoon nodded eagerly. That's what I discovered in my research. Human DNA contains what I call anchor sequences, genetic codes that bind life force to the physical body in ways that make complete extraction impossible. But that's not the most important part, Nari continued, her voice filled with growing wonder. My people realized that if Vellani DNA was combined with human DNA, the resulting hybrid would be not just resistant to devourer feeding, but actively toxic to them. The implications hit Tae-ho like a physical blow. You're saying that if our genetic material was properly combined, yes, Nari said, the hybrid offspring would be immune to devourer attacks. More than immune, dangerous to them. But there's a problem, Professor Yoon said gravely. The process is incredibly risky. Vellani physiology is designed to interface with technology, but human biology isn't. The genetic fusion could kill both participants. Nari was still accessing the memory cores, pulling out more information. My people tried this before, with volunteers from other species. The success rate was less than 10%. What happened to the ones who survived? Tae-ho asked. They became something new, Nari said. Not fully Vellani, not fully their original species. They could interface with any technology they touched. They could heal from injuries that would kill normal beings. And their children. She paused, her expression full of wonder. Their children were born already adapted to fight the devourers. Tae-ho looked around the laboratory, at all the evidence of the Galactic War that had touched Earth. How many people know about this? Very few, Professor Yoon said. The major factions suppressed this information because it would panic the population. But some researchers like Dr. Lee at the KRA suspect the truth. Is that why she wants to study Nari so badly? Doctor. Lee is brilliant, but she doesn't understand the full picture, Yoon explained. She thinks Villani technology can be copied and used by humans. She doesn't realize that the technology and biology are inseparable. Nari finally disconnected from the memory core, swaying slightly from the effort. Tejo caught her arm to steady her. "There's more," she said weakly. "The Devourers are returning, but they're not coming alone. They've brought allies, other species they've conquered and turned into servants. The fleet approaching Earth is massive." "How long do we have?" Tejo asked. "Months, maybe less." Nari looked at him with those deep ocean eyes. "Tejo, the genetic fusion. It's our only chance. Not just for us, but for your entire world." "The risks," Professor Yoon began. "Are worth taking," Tejo interrupted. "If there's even a small chance this could work." "The chance is not small," Nari said. "I have been changing since the day you found me. Your genetics, your life force, they're already merging with mine. The process has begun naturally." Tejo realized she was right. He could feel the changes in himself. His vision was sharper, especially in low light. He could understand technology in ways that should have been impossible. When he touched electronic devices, he could sense their internal workings. "But we need to complete the process deliberately, under controlled conditions," Professor Yoon said. "In my laboratory, I have equipment that might make it safer." "And if it works?" Tejo asked. "If it works, you become the first human-Villani hybrid," Nari said. "Immune to devourer attacks, able to interface with any technology, capable of building weapons that can hurt them." "And if it doesn't work?" Nari took his hand in hers. "Then we die together, knowing we tried to save both our peoples." Professor Yoon began preparing his equipment. "I'll need several hours to set up the genetic fusion chamber. Are you both certain about this?" Tejo looked at Nari, seeing not just the alien refugee he had found in the sand, but the brave warrior who had traveled across the galaxy to fight an impossible enemy. "I'm certain," he said. "As am I," Nari replied. As Professor Yoon worked, Tejo couldn't help but think about how much his life had changed. A few weeks ago, he had been a lonely scavenger with no purpose beyond daily survival. Now he was about to undergo an experimental procedure that would either make him humanity's greatest weapon against an alien threat or kill him in the attempt. Either way, he was no longer alone, and for the first time since the Great Collapse, Earth might have hope. The genetic fusion chamber looked like something from a nightmare. Professor Yoon had built it from salvaged medical equipment and alien technology, creating a device that hummed with barely contained energy. 2 pods sat side by side, connected by thick cables and monitoring systems. "The process will take approximately 6 hours, Professor Yoon explained, making final adjustments to the controls. "Your genetic material will be broken down to its basic components and then rebuilt in a new pattern. If everything goes according to plan, you'll emerge as a stable hybrid." "And if things don't go according to plan?" Tejo asked. "Then the genetic breakdown will be irreversible," Yoon said honestly. "You'll both die." Nari squeezed Tejo's hand. "Are you ready?" Tejo looked at her, this amazing being who had already changed his life in so many ways. "I'm ready." They climbed into their respective pods. The interior was lined with sensors that would monitor every aspect of the fusion process. As the lids closed, Tejo felt a moment of panic. What if this was a mistake? What if they were about to throw away their lives for nothing? But then the process began, and all his doubts disappeared. The first sensation was warmth spreading through his entire body. It felt like lying in sunlight after years of cold. Then came the tingling, as if every cell in his body was waking up from a long sleep. Through the pod's transparent lid, he could see Nari in her chamber, her pale blue skin glowing with soft light. Professor Yoon's voice came through the communication system. "Genetic breakdown beginning. vital signs stable in both subjects. The tingling became something more intense. Tai-Ho felt his consciousness expanding, as if the boundaries of his mind were dissolving. Suddenly, he could sense Nari's thoughts and feelings as clearly as his own. Her memories flowed into his mind, images of distant worlds, of the Vellani civilization before the Devourers came, of the desperate flight across space that had brought her to Earth. At the same time, she was experiencing his memories, his childhood before the Great Collapse, his military service, the long years of lonely survival in the wasteland, the moment he found her buried in the crystal sand. Genetic integration at 50%, Professor Yoon announced. This is remarkable. The compatibility is much higher than the historical data suggested. Through their shared consciousness, Tai-Ho and Nari could feel their bodies changing at the molecular level. His human DNA was merging with her Vellani genetics, creating something entirely new. The changes weren't just physical. His mind was expanding, gaining new capabilities he never could have imagined. Suddenly, he could sense every electronic device in the laboratory, not just sense them, but understand them completely. He could feel the flow of electricity through the circuits, hear the whispered conversations between different systems. The fusion chamber itself was like a living thing, its artificial intelligence struggling to comprehend what was happening inside it. The chamber's systems are overloading, Professor Yoon said, his voice tense with worry. The energy output is beyond what I calculated. Through his new awareness, Tai-Ho could feel the professor's concern. The chamber wasn't designed to handle the level of energy their fusion was generating. If the containment failed, the explosion would level half the mountain. But Nari was there in his mind, calm and confident. Together, they reached out with their expanding consciousness and touched the chamber's control systems. Instead of fighting the overload, they guided it, showing the machines how to adapt and grow beyond their original programming. The chamber's artificial intelligence suddenly became more complex, more alive. It began modifying its own systems in real time, upgrading itself to handle the impossible energy levels. What had been a simple medical device was transforming into something approaching true artificial life. Genetic integration at 90%, Professor Yoon announced, his voice filled with awe. The energy readings are off the charts, but somehow everything is stable. The final phase of the fusion was the most intense. Tai-Ho felt his consciousness merge completely with Nari's, their individual identities dissolving into something greater. For a terrifying moment, he thought he was disappearing entirely, but then he realized he wasn't losing himself. He was becoming more than he had ever been. The chamber powered down slowly, the glowing pods opening with soft hisses of escaping air. Tai-Ho sat up carefully, expecting to feel different. He did, but not in the way he had anticipated. He felt complete. Nari sat up in her pod, her appearance subtly changed. Her skin was still pale blue, but now it had hints of human warmth in it. Her silver hair had streaks of black that matched his own. Most remarkably, her ocean blue eyes now held flecks of brown. "How do you feel?" Professor Yoon asked, scanning them with various instruments. "Different," Tai-Ho said, his voice carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. But not wrong. More like finally right. He looked at his hands and saw that his skin had taken on a subtle blue tint. His hair had silver streaks running through it. When he moved, it was with a grace that felt perfectly natural but would have been impossible before. "The genetic fusion was successful beyond my wildest projections," Professor Yoon said, studying his readouts. "You're both stable, healthy, and—" He paused, staring at one particular display. "Completely immune to devourer-feeding mechanisms." Nari stood and walked to the laboratory's main computer terminal. The moment she touched it, every screen in the room came alive with data. But this time, Taeho could understand it all as well. Together, they accessed the scattered memory cores and began piecing together the complete intelligence about Devourer weaknesses. "Look at this," Taeho said, pointing to a schematic that was downloading itself directly into their shared consciousness. "Weapon specifications. We can build devices that will disrupt Devourer ships." "More than that," Nari added, accessing deeper files. "We can modify human technology to interface with Villani systems, create hybrid weapons that neither species could build alone." Professor Yoon watched in amazement as they worked together, their minds moving faster than any computer he had ever seen. "You're not just immune to the Devourers," he realized. "You're their worst nightmare." "The fusion changed more than our genetics," Nari explained. "Our consciousness is now quantum entangled. We think as one being with two bodies, which means we can coordinate perfectly with any technology we touch," Taeho continued. "But we need resources, materials, manufacturing capability, people to help us build the weapons." "The KRA has those resources," Professor Yoon pointed out. "And they're still hunting us," Taeho replied. "Dr. Lee won't stop until she captures Nari for study." "Dr. Lee may not have a choice much longer," Nari said, pulling up astronomical data. "The Devourer advanced scouts have reached the outer edge of your solar system. They'll be in Earth orbit within weeks." As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring throughout the laboratory. Professor Yoon checked his perimeter sensors and went pale. "KRA forces," he announced. "At least 2 companies, approaching from multiple directions. Someone must have tracked you here." Through their enhanced senses, Taeho and Nari could detect the approaching soldiers. Commander Park was leading them personally, and Dr. Lee was with him. But more importantly, they could sense something else. "They're not just hunting us," Nari said grimly. "They've detected the Devourer scouts too. The KRA is preparing for war." "Then it's time we gave them the weapons they'll need to fight it," Taeho said. As KRA soldiers surrounded the mountain laboratory, the first human Villani hybrid prepared to offer their former enemies an alliance that might save both species. The real battle for Earth was about to begin. The KRA soldiers surrounded Professor Yoon's laboratory like a steel trap closing. Commander Park's voice echoed from loudspeakers outside the mountain facility. "Taeho! We know you're in there! Come out peacefully and bring the alien with you. We have bigger problems to discuss." Through their enhanced senses, Taeho and Nari could detect the fear in the commander's voice. It wasn't the confident authority they had heard before. Something had changed. "They're scared," Nari observed, her consciousness touching the electronic systems of the KRA vehicles outside. "Their communications are full of panic." "About what?" Professor Yoon asked. Taeho interfaced with the laboratory's monitoring equipment, extending his awareness to the military satellites orbiting Earth. What he found made his blood run cold. 3 Devourer scout ships entered Earth's atmosphere 2 hours ago, he announced. They've been conducting reconnaissance flights over major population centers. The KRA tried to intercept them, Nari added, accessing the military command networks. They lost 6 fighter jets and a destroyer. Their weapons did absolutely nothing to the alien ships. Professor Yoon looked grim. "Which means they need us, more than they're willing to admit." "Commander Park," Taeho called out through the laboratory's communication system. "We'll come out, but on one condition. Dr. Lee comes inside alone first. We need to show her something." There was a long pause. Then Dr. Lee's voice came through the speakers. "I'm coming in." The laboratory's blast doors opened, and Dr. So-Young Lee entered cautiously. She looked exhausted, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. When she saw Taeho and Nari, her eyes widened in shock. "You've changed," she said, studying their altered features. "Both of you." "We underwent genetic fusion," Nari explained simply. "We are now a hybrid species, immune to devourer attacks and capable of building weapons that can hurt them. Dr. Lee's scientific curiosity overcame her military training. That should be impossible. The genetic incompatibility alone. Would you like to see the data? Tae-ho asked. Before she could answer, he touched her tablet computer. Instantly, it filled with information about the fusion process, the genetic modifications, and most importantly, the intelligence about devourer weaknesses. Dr. Lee stared at the data streaming across her screen, her expression shifting from skepticism to amazement to fear. "This is accurate?" she asked. "The devourers really can't feed on hybrid genetics?" "More than that," Nari said. "Hybrid genetics are toxic to them. Physical contact with us would cause severe damage to their feeding mechanisms." "But that's not why we wanted to talk to you," Tae-ho continued. "We need the KRA's resources to build weapons capable of fighting the main devourer fleet." Dr. Lee looked up from her tablet. "What main fleet?" Nari and Tae-ho exchanged a look through their shared consciousness. They had access to information. The KRA didn't. "Show her," Nari said. Tae-ho interfaced with the laboratory's computers, projecting a holographic display of space around Earth's solar system. Hundreds of red dots appeared, moving inexorably toward the inner planets. The scout. "Ships were just the beginning," he explained. "The main devourer armada will arrive in less than a month. Over 300 ships plus allies from species they've conquered." Dr. Lee went pale. 300? We can barely handle 3 scouts." "That's why we need to work together," Nari said. "Human technology combined with Vellani science can create weapons powerful enough to fight them. But it will require complete cooperation," Tae-ho added. "No more hunting us, no more trying to capture and study us. We need to be partners." Dr. Lee was quiet for a long moment, studying the tactical display. Finally, she activated her communicator. "Commander, Park, you need to see this." Within minutes, the laboratory was filled with KRA officers. Commander Park's expression was grim as he studied the holographic fleet display. "How do we know this information is accurate?" he demanded. "Because we're connected to every satellite and monitoring station on Earth," Tae-ho replied. "We can see things your equipment can't detect." "Prove it," Park challenged. Nari touched the laboratory's main computer. Suddenly, every screen in the bag room showed feeds from security cameras across the KRA's supposedly secret installations. Personnel files, tactical plans, even Park's personal communications appeared on the displays. "Stop," Park ordered. "I believe you. The question is," Dr. Lee said, "can we really build weapons capable of fighting this armada?" "We can," Nari said confidently. "But we'll need resources from every major faction on Earth. The KRA, the resistance networks, the independent settlements, everyone working together." "That's impossible," Commander Park said. "These groups have been fighting each other for decades." "Then they'll die fighting each other while the devourers consume what's left of your world," Tae-ho replied bluntly. "Professor," Yoon stepped forward. "I've been in contact with scientists from other factions. Most of them suspect the truth about what's coming. If we can prove the threat is real—" "We can," Nari said. She interfaced with the global communication networks, sending out a signal that reached every radio, television, and computer on Earth. The message was simple but clear. An alien armada was approaching. Earth's governments had tried and failed to stop the scouts. But there was hope if humanity would unite. Within hours, responses began flooding in from survivor communities around the world. Scientists, engineers, military leaders, all offering to help in whatever way they could. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Lee marveled, watching the responses pour in. "Cooperation on a global scale." "Fear is a powerful motivator," Commander Park observed. "But can we really trust these hybrid weapons you're proposing?" "Let us show you," Tae-ho said. Working together, He and Nari began modifying one of the laboratory's particle accelerators. Their hands moved in perfect synchronization, their shared consciousness allowing them to work faster than any team of engineers. Within 2 hours, they had transformed the research device into something entirely new. "This is a prototype devourer disruptor," Nari explained. "It generates energy frequencies that interfere with their organic technology." "How do we test it?" Dr. Lee asked. As if in answer to her question, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Through the laboratory's sensors, they could detect 3 Devourer scout ships approaching at high speed. "They've found us," Commander Park said, reaching for his weapon. "Good," Tae-ho replied, shouldering the prototype disruptor. "Now we can field test our work." Outside the laboratory, KRA soldiers took defensive positions as the alien ships descended from the clouds. The scout vessels were beautiful in a terrifying way, organic curves that seemed to pulse with their own life, technology that looked grown rather than built. The first ship fired some kind of energy weapon at the KRA forces. Wherever the beam touched, people simply collapsed, their life force drained away in seconds. "Now," Nari said. Tae-ho aimed the disruptor at the attacking ship and fired. The beam struck the vessel's hull, and immediately the organic technology began to writhe and convulse. The ship's smooth curves twisted into agonized shapes, and it crashed into the mountainside with a sound like a dying animal. "It works," Dr. Lee breathed. The other 2 scout ships turned their attention to the laboratory, recognizing the new threat. But Tae-ho and Nari were ready. Working in perfect harmony, they disabled both ships with precise shots that sent them spiraling out of control. As the smoke cleared, Commander Park looked at the wreckage of 3 ships that his entire military couldn't touch. "All right," he said quietly. "You have our full cooperation. What do you need?" "Everything," Nari replied. "Every factory, every resource, every person willing to fight. We have less than a month to prepare for the largest battle in human history. And if we fail?" Park asked. Tae-ho looked up at the sky where more alien ships would soon appear. Then humanity becomes just another meal for the Devourers. But for the first time since the Great Collapse, Earth had hope. And sometimes, hope was enough to change everything. The day the Devourer Armada arrived, Earth was ready. For 3 weeks, every factory on the planet had worked around the clock. The hybrid weapons Tae-ho and Nari designed were being built in facilities from Seoul to Sao Paulo, from New York to New Delhi. Survivor communities that had been enemies for decades now shared resources and expertise, united by the knowledge that extinction was the only alternative. Tae-ho stood on the command deck of the orbital defense station that had been humanity's greatest engineering achievement since the Great Collapse. Built from salvaged materials and powered by hybrid technology, it floated in space above Earth like a metallic guardian angel. 312 ships, Nari reported, her consciousness interfacing with sensors throughout the solar system. Devourer command vessels, feeding ships, and escort craft from at least 6 conquered species. Through the station's windows, they could see the enemy fleet approaching. The ships were massive, organic shapes that pulsed with malevolent life. Some were kilometers long, their surfaces crawling with what looked like veins carrying alien blood. "All stations report ready," Commander Park announced from the tactical center. His earlier hostility toward Tae-ho and Nari had been replaced by grudging respect and desperate hope. Dr. Lee worked at a bank of computers, coordinating the global defense network. Weapon systems online worldwide. Every major city has at least 3 disruptor arrays. The orbital platforms are fully charged. "The resistance networks are in position," Mi-young Choi reported from her command post. "Guerrilla units standing by for ground operations if the fleet breaks through." Jin Soo-han's voice crackled over the communications system from a forward observation post. "Enemy lead ships entering lunar orbit. They're huge." Through their shared consciousness, Taiho and Nari could sense the fear radiating from defenders around the globe. Humanity had never faced anything like this. The Devourer fleet was larger than some moons, a concentration of destructive power that had consumed entire civilizations. But they could also sense something else: determination. For the first time in 50 years, humanity was truly united. Every person on Earth understood that this was their moment of truth. "Incoming transmission from the Devourer command ship," Dr. Lee announced. The main screen filled with an image that made everyone in the command center recoil. The Devourer leader was a nightmare made flesh, a writhing mass of organic technology and corrupted biology. When it spoke, its voice was like the sound of worlds dying. "Humans of Earth," it said in perfect English, somehow having absorbed the language from its previous visits. "You will submit to harvesting. Your resistance is futile. We have consumed 1,000 worlds more advanced than yours." Taiho stepped forward. "This is Taiho Kim, speaking for the people of Earth. We've prepared a response to your demand." He nodded to Nari, who activated the hybrid weapon systems. Around the globe, hundreds of disruptor arrays powered up simultaneously. The combined energy signature was unlike anything that had ever existed. Human determination merged with Volani technology, creating something that transcended both species. "Your response is noted," the Devourer leader said with what might have been amusement. "It changes nothing. Begin the harvest." The first wave of Devourer ships moved toward Earth, their feeding beams already charging. These were the same weapons that had drained the life from billions during the Great Collapse. "All units," Taiho commanded. "Fire." The sky lit up with energy beams as Earth's defenses opened fire. The hybrid disruptors struck the Devourer ships with devastating effect. Organic hulls writhed and twisted as their living technology was disrupted at the molecular level. Ships that had seemed invincible began falling toward Earth's atmosphere, burning like falling stars, but there were so many of them. "Second wave incoming," Nari reported. "They're adapting to our weapon frequencies." The Devourers were learning. Their ships began generating defensive fields that partially protected them from the disruptor beams. Some of the larger vessels made it through the orbital defenses and began their harvest beams on Earth's major cities. In Beijing, millions of people simply collapsed as their life force was drained away. In London, entire city blocks became empty. Graveyards in seconds. The Devourers were doing what they had done to 1,000 other worlds, but something was different this time. "The harvest beams are only working at partial efficiency," Dr. Lee reported with amazement. "Human genetic resistance is stronger than they calculated." "Not just that," Nari added, her consciousness touching the minds of defenders around the globe. "The people who survived the initial feeding are becoming stronger, more resistant." Taiho understood. The Devourer's own attacks were triggering an evolutionary response in humanity. Those who survived were developing natural immunities to the life-drain technology. "All ground forces advance to secondary positions," he ordered. "Use the hybrid weapons at close range." Around the world, human fighters emerged from shelters and underground bunkers. They carried weapons that should have been impossible. Guns that fired living energy, armor that adapted to threats in real time, vehicles that thought for themselves. The technology was part human engineering, part Volani biotechnology, and entirely unprecedented. The battle became something no one had expected. Instead of a quick harvesting, the Devourers found themselves in a genuine war. Human fighters moved, with coordination that seemed almost telepathic, guided by the global consciousness network that Taiho and Nari had established. "Impossible." The Devourer leader's voice crackled over the communications. "No species has ever mounted effective. Resistance after harvest began. You never faced humans before," Taiho replied. The turning point came when Jin Su's guerrilla unit managed to board a damaged Devourer ship. Using hybrid cutting tools, they reached the vessel's organic brain center. The moment human hands touched the alien neural matrix. Something extraordinary happened. The ship's consciousness was overwhelmed by human thoughts and emotions. Instead of the cold hunger that drove devourer technology, it experienced hope, determination, and love. The alien ship's living systems couldn't process these foreign concepts. Its organic brain simply shut down, and the massive vessel went dead in space. They can't handle human emotions, Nari realized. Their technology is based on hunger and consumption. Our feelings are literally toxic to their systems. Then let's give them something to feel, Taeho said. Working together, they established a psychic link with every human defender on Earth. Suddenly, the entire planet was connected by a network of shared consciousness. Every person could feel the determination of their neighbors, the love for their families, the hope for their future. This collective human spirit flowed through the hybrid weapons, supercharging them with emotional energy that the devourers couldn't understand or defend against. Their ships began failing throughout the fleet, organic systems corrupted by contact with human consciousness. The devourer leader appeared on the screen again, its form writhing with confusion and something that might have been fear. "What are you?" it demanded. "We're human," Taeho replied simply. "And we don't give up." The final phase of the battle was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of being consumed by superior alien technology, humanity transformed the conflict into something the devourers had never experienced. A battle of spirit as much as weapons. Human fighters didn't just fight for survival. They fought for their children's future, for the memory of those they had lost, for the dream of rebuilding their world. This emotional intensity flowed through the hybrid weapons, creating energy patterns that no devourer ship could withstand. One by one, the great harvesting vessels fell silent. Their organic brains, evolved to process only hunger and consumption, couldn't cope with the complexity of human emotion. The fleet that had conquered 1,000 worlds was defeated not by superior technology, but by something they had never encountered before. Hope. "The command ship is retreating," Commander Park reported with disbelief. "The entire fleet is pulling back." On the main screen, the devourer leader made one final transmission. Its form was shuddering, clearly damaged by contact with human consciousness. "This world is wrong," it said. "Your species is unnatural. We will not return." As the alien fleet disappeared into hyperspace, Earth erupted in celebration. Cities that had been under attack just hours before now, filled with people cheering and crying and embracing each other. But Taeho and Nari felt something more than victory. Through their connection to the global consciousness network, they could sense the changes happening throughout humanity. The hybrid technology hadn't just given people weapons. It had awakened capabilities that had always been present in human DNA. "We're evolving," Nari said softly. "All of us." "Into what?" Dr. Lee asked. "Into something new," Taeho replied. "Something that can stand as an equal among the stars." 5 years later, Earth had become the center of an interstellar alliance. Refugee ships from devourer-attacked worlds arrived daily, seeking sanctuary and finding welcome. The hybrid technology developed during the war had transformed human civilization, making Earth a beacon of hope throughout the galaxy. Taeho and Nari stood on the observation deck of the new orbital city that had been built from the wreckage of the devourer ships. Below them,